Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. As you may have saw in the thumbnail, I'm really happy to say the channel's reached 100 subscribers. I know in the grand scheme of people uploading on YouTube, that's not a ton of subscribers, but I'm pretty stoked to be at 100 subscribers, and the count keeps going up every day. So I just wanted to say thank you to everybody who's subscribed to my channel. Thank you to everybody who continues to watch my videos, and I can only hope that it continues to grow from here. And in celebration of hitting 100 subscribers, I've decided to introduce this here. You already saw it in the intro, some teaser shots there, but this is my 2002 Subaru WRX. And let's go ahead and I'm going to walk you around and show you the work I've done to it so far, everything that's going on with it, and what we plan on doing today and in the future. Alright, so I'll go ahead and start off up here on this corner. So we have Enki RS5s. I just finished them up in gold. Previously they were a fluorescent yellow on my previous Impreza. I'm not a huge fan of these wheels, but it's what I have right now. In the future I do plan on airbagging this, in which case I'll be dialing the fitment in and deciding exactly how big and how wide I want the wheels to be, but for now these work. You can see in there I've done the 4 2-pot swap. These are actually the cheaper way of doing it. These are 06 WRX calipers. Easy way to do that. You can go right on Rock Auto and get some refurbished ones. They're on there. Car hasn't been driven since they've been on, so the EBC rotors are still black on the face there. They haven't been worn down, but those are some EBC rotors on there. We'll come around to the engine bay. And we have a lot going on in here. I'm not going to go into a ton of detail, exactly every last little bit that's in here, but I'll go over the major components. For turbo, this came with a Power Enterprise 1818 turbo, a bit of an upgrade over stock. You can see just generic kind of eBay spec strut bar on there. Hyperflow, which I don't believe is in production anymore, intercooler which came on the car, Grimspeed electronic boost controller, chase bays, power steering coolant reservoir. I'm still trying to chase down some gremlins with that. The fluid likes to aerate, and I'm having some issues, but hopefully we can track that down. I have the Go Fast Bits underdrive pulley set, as well as a Go Fast Bits recirculating blow-off valve. And you can also see that the front end is disassembled right now. This car has been sitting for quite a while. I'll mention it later exactly how long this has been sitting. But I don't know if you can make it out there on camera or not. The gasket around the water pump failed, I'm assuming just from sitting. We're leaking coolant. So we're in the middle of a timing belt replacement project on this car, which is why everything is all over the bench over here. We're not going to be getting to that today. We're going to get into that in the future. This has the projector headlights. I believe these are not just generic eBay ones. I actually believe these are the JDM spec headlights. Again, these came on the car, so I can't confirm. They are, however, the non-HID versions, even though I'm running HIDs in them currently. Coming around to the interior, it's probably going to be a little dark. I don't even know if you can make that out. But the seats have been replaced with the seats out of my old 05 Impreza 2.5 RS. They are much nicer than the stock seats that came on this 02 WRX. And in the interior, we got a lot of good stuff going on. Dual gauge pod behind the steering wheel there. We got the triple gauge pod, the ATI triple gauge pod up there on the dash. We have our access port there as well, and a bunch of little carbon fiber odds and ends throughout there. And coming around to the back, we have a NVIDIA exhaust, which we'll be actually getting into a little bit here. And in the trunk, we have an Odyssey battery relocation here in the trunk, as well as I've gone ahead and utilized the STI intercooler spray as a washer fluid reservoir here in the trunk, so that's been eliminated in the engine bay. But that's about it for major modifications. Let's go over to the bench. I'm gonna bore you guys with a little bit of history of this car, why it's been sitting so long, and exactly what we're gonna be getting into here later today. All right, guys, so like I said, the car's been off the road for quite a while. It's actually been 6 years the car's been off the road. The reason why that is, prior to me taking it off the road, I was going through an e-tuning process with IA Performance. They're an e-tuner. Honestly, it's been 6 years, so I'm not even sure if they're still doing that anymore. I assume they are, but that's who I was going through. The initial phase of getting the e-tune done was, was normal. Everything was going along good, but as we were trying to finalize the last little bit of getting this thing tuned, it was acting strange. I'm not a tuner, but in layman's terms, the tuner was making very large adjustments to the wastegate duty cycle, and it was producing boost changes that were not consistent with how he was changing the wastegate duty cycle. It was overboosting, sometimes underboosting other times, and it was not in relation to how he was adjusting the wastegate duty cycle. Now, I wish they could have provided me a little more information as to, the possibilities of what was going on there, but then again, that may just be because it's an e-tuning process. They can't see the car, they're not driving the car, and maybe they're not willing to, throw guesses out there without knowing what's going on. Either way, as we were trying to, maybe address some symptoms and figure out what it could be, I was noticing that under wide open throttle and a lot of load, so for example, going up an on-ramp on the highway, going wide open throttle, I started getting a pretty significant misfire. At which point I did some Googling, and I suppose it's kind of like when they say don't Google your symptoms if you're sick, because it'll tell you you're dying. I started Googling, and the first few things I came across were, low compression on a cylinder would be causing that. So I immediately freaked out, like, oh crap, the motor's not healthy, and I went and I bought a very, very cheap compression tester from AutoZone. I think it was like $12 or something like that. And I ran a compression test, and it showed me that the driver's side 2 cylinders were half, if not less, of the expected compression. So, I told that to the tuner, and he said, that may be, the problems that we're experiencing here, and, we decided to end the process there. It was getting close to winter that year, so it was going to be coming off the road anyway. And that's pretty much where it sat. It sat for 2 or 3 years because I thought I was in the market for a built engine or rebuilding this engine, and that was going to be a lot of money I didn't really have. Like I said, about 3 years went by, 3, maybe 4, and I said, okay, we ended up here in this larger space. I was working previously in a very small garage that was, part of a split level house where the garage was actually the basement, not a lot of room for tools. I've grown into this very nice space here, and I said enough's enough. I got to figure out what's going on with this definitively. So I went and I got a quality compression tester as well as a quality leak down tester. And I ran all 4 scenarios of a compression test. So I did cold dry, cold wet, warm warm dry, and the numbers came out fine. All within expected compression numbers you would see, I believe, and I don't remember off the top of my head. One cylinder was slightly less, but nowhere near what I had seen previously, and quite honestly, nowhere near anything that would cause a misfire like that. I also ran the leak down test, same thing. Leak down was within spec. That same cylinder had the numbers were slightly off from the other one, but again, nothing that would scream that, wow, that's significant enough. It was so slight, just off the other numbers, but still within spec. I'm not a professional mechanic. My conclusion is this: one of 2 things. Either it was the cheap compression tester that I was using, just fluked for whatever reason on those 2 cylinders and I got bad numbers, or because when I first bought this car, the wastegate was stuck, and so it was 100% boost. It had a manual boost controller when I bought it. The arm was stuck, so it was just 100% boost, and I was over boosting and didn't realize it because the gauge was also off. So I thought maybe I lifted the head. And I suppose maybe, again, I don't know if this is possible, but maybe sitting 3-4 years, oil and coolant on either side of the head gasket may have, you know, filled in any areas where we may have been losing compression, you know, be it in the cylinder around the rings or be it around the head gaskets, you know, where you would lose compression as well. Maybe that's far-fetched. I'm not really sure. I'm still on the fence. I don't know. I find it hard to believe that even if it were a cheap compression tester, you would assume that because I didn't just check each cylinder once. I went back through and I checked the cylinders a bunch of times, and it was pretty consistent. These two were half, if not lower, than the expected compression. When I replicated the results 3-4 years later with the better compression tester and also did a leak down, all the numbers again were in spec. So finally, probably last year, I said, screw it. I'm gonna do what I need to do to get this thing on the road, get it running, and if the engine's not healthy, I'm sure we'll find out, or I panicked for nothing and it is healthy. So that's where we're at now. So enough of me rambling on and boring you guys with what's going on with this car. Let's go ahead and get into what we're gonna be working on today. So as I was saying before, one of the last things I did on this was the 4.2 pot caliper conversion. And I noticed when I put the rear rotors on, when they went over the e-brake shoes, even with the adjuster allowing for the most amount of room for those shoes, there was quite a bit of contact with the pads and the inside of the rotor drum for the e-brake housing. And I thought, you know, whatever, maybe it's just a little bit tight. We'll throw them on and, you know, I'll put them down and maybe they just got to wear a little bit. But then I found out they were extremely too tight because you can't move the car. So we're going to go ahead and lift this up, take these wheels off. We're going to have to make an adjustment to the emergency brake adjuster shoes. So let's go ahead and tackle that. We have our adjuster gear right here. What we're going to do is we're going to take this out and I'm going to bring it over to the grinder and we're going to show you how we're going to modify this to make it work out for us. Okay, so this is the adjuster for the e-brake, and as you make adjustments to it, you spin this out, and what it'll do is it spreads the e-brake shoes out. But when I had installed this, everything was adjusted all the way in, and those e-brake shoes were still too tight. And I actually stumbled across this on the internet. Someone else had posted, when you buy these kits now, a lot of times there's just too much material, and these are too wide. So what we're going to do is on this end, we're just going to take and we're going to grind off some material, and that will give us enough room for those shoes to come in far enough to play nice with the rotors. Okay, so I've got those adjusted pretty close to where they need to be. We can make any final adjustments to those shoes from the back side of the hub through the access points, but we're going to throw everything together, repeat that on the other side, and see if that solves our problem. Alright guys, so we ended up adjusting both e-brakes adjusters on both sides. We went ahead and threw the wheels on, dropped the car back down, and I still couldn't get it to move. I lifted it back up and tried to spin the wheels by hand, and they're clearly binding up on something. So I thought maybe the pads just weren't releasing after we bled the brakes, so we compressed the pads in, and then when I tightened the lug nuts down on the wheel, all of a sudden the wheel is practically seized and it won't move. And when I took a look at the rotor, on the inside lip of the rotor, you could actually see where the paint was being scraped off. And it's actually making contact right here and just under here. So we're gonna have to just create some clearance here, clearance these two areas out. I think this is just possibly due to rust over time. We need to clearance these two areas out, and then hopefully our rotor will spin free and clear, and this issue will have been resolved. Alright guys, sorry about that. Battery died while I was grinding away, but we took our flat disc wheel on our angle grinder and we just got in here. We removed some material here as well as over here where that inner lip of the rotor drum housing for the e-brake sits, and it appears that we don't have any more clearance issues. So we're going to go ahead and get everything reassembled and do it to the other side. And hopefully we'll have figured it out, but we won't know until we get it done. So let's get cracking, get that done, and I'll be right back with you. All right, guys, so I think we solved the problem. Moment of truth. Let's go ahead and see if this will roll. Oh yeah. That's what I was hoping for. So that's that small project all wrapped up. The next thing I need to move on to, we're going to go ahead and lift this up. Put all four corners on jack stands so that we'll be able to get underneath it. Let's go ahead and get that done, and I'll explain what we're going to be doing after that. Alright, so next we need to go ahead and put the exhaust back on. This is a Grimspeed 3-inch downpipe, NVIDIA 3-inch catback exhaust. Downpipe has a high flow cat in it. But I pulled these off because I was under the vehicle at one point, and I noticed that I had a pretty good drip from the seal around the shifter shaft selector where it goes into the back of the transmission. So I pulled the drive shaft, the exhaust, all that, so I could take the cover off the back of the extension housing on the transmission and replace that seal to stop the leaking. So we got to go ahead and throw this exhaust back in the car. And to do that, we have for the top part of the downpipe, we have a Grimspeed multi-layer steel gasket. For the downpipe to catback exhaust, I just got this Rimflex crush gasket off of Rally Sport Direct, just because the Grimspeed one is excessively expensive in my opinion. And then I just have a leftover composite gasket here for the rear portion of the exhaust. This was the stock NVIDIA one, and I've just had this for a while, so we'll slap that on. I also noticed some of the rubber exhaust hangers are starting to hang quite a bit, so I got this 4-pack of urethane ones, again from Rally Sport Direct. We'll go ahead and swap out the soft failing rubber ones for these urethane ones. And lastly, originally when I put this in, I used the stainless steel hardware, but I hate hardware with washers. I don't like how it looks, so I went ahead and got some flange bolts and nuts for a much cleaner factory look, and again, these are stainless steel. So we're going to go ahead and get started with getting the downpipe back in first, and that goes in the underside of the car. And last, we'll go ahead and get this center section of the exhaust put back up. Alright guys, that's going to wrap things up for today. I'm really happy to be back working on this again. I'm going to leave it up in the air on these jack stands just because there's a couple small things I noticed need to be wrapped up, while I was working around under there. I'll get to those in another video. But I'm glad now to have those rear brakes freed up and rolling again, no problem. And we got that exhaust all buttoned up with the new hangers on there. That should be real nice without those old rubber hangers allowing that exhaust to move around way too much. So that's where we're going to leave things for today, guys. Appreciate you watching. Go ahead and hit that like button. Feel free to leave a comment below. And as always, if you're not subscribed already, please go ahead and subscribe. Thanks.